Okay, so welcome everybody to the HomeBuddy Active Prospect webinar. Today we're going to be talking about a lot of TCPA discussion, a lot of what Active Prospect does, and then some information on what it is we do here at HomeBuddy. Let's go ahead and just kind of jump into the housekeeping for today and what you can kind of expect from us. This webinar is scheduled to last 60 minutes, not guaranteeing it's going to take that entire hour, but the last few webinars we've run at HomeBuddy, we've gone right up against the clock at 30 minutes. So we've had Q&A spill over and people have had to bounce. So we're going to schedule this one for an hour, but we have a lot of good content. I think everybody's going to really enjoy this. We definitely encourage you guys to participate here in the chat, get us questions. If Ruben and I are in the middle of something, we're rapping back and forth and a question comes, we have other people from HomeBuddy on this chat. They can probably answer your questions, take care of that, but please do not be afraid or fearful of putting any kind of question in there for us to address. This video will be released to everybody that had registered to the call. Probably, I'm assuming about an hour after we finish up for properly transcribed and put together. And so we'll get that back to you. And at the end, we'll have a quick survey. We'll have multiple surveys actually throughout this webinar today, but we'll have a quick follow-up survey at the end. So with that being said, let's get into it. What can you expect from today's call? Well, Ruben, why don't you kind of, I've talked enough. I'll talk more, but let's hear from you.
Yeah, so the focus right now, there's a lot of focus around TCPA compliance, lead generation, what that means more so than ever before. We'll kind of dip into that. A key term that is in home services is NSLI, net sales per lead issue. So we're going to kind of dig into that. I know that's more and more brands are starting to evolve and use that at the sales rep level. But overall, it feels like the topic of discussion in home services is quality of leads deteriorating. And so I'm happy to be here with yourself and HomeBuddy and representing AP. But we're going to talk about all that quality of leads, NSLI, FCC compliance, and kind of everything in between. So pumped to have an active discussion. And to your point, please, if you're listening and you have a question, you're like, oh, hey, I want to talk about more about that, throw it in the chat. We'd love to answer things either in real time or at different points during the webinar.
And I'll just kind of say this before we get into introductions of ourselves. I've been to two shows. What are we? We're mid to late April right now. So Home Services Growth Summit, Active Prospect was there here in Atlanta. Talked to a couple of your people, and then obviously we had our dinner at LeadsCon, and you're seeing a lot of TCPA compliance people start showing up at these shows and kind of offering their services. Very hot button topic right now. So it's going to be exciting to get into it. And I personally feel like you guys are kind of in this space, the foremost expert on it because of what you guys already do and then what you're trying to communicate and educate your clients with. So this should be a good one today. Just introductions. I'm Ryan Pedersen. I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships at HomeBuddy. I've been here for a little over a year. Been in the lead space for about 18 years now, going back to when I got started in 2006. Worked in radio, print, and digital. And so that's kind of a quick about me. I'm going to hand it over to you, Ruben, because you're much more interesting than I.
I don't know about all that, but thank you. Number one, just thank you, HomeBuddy. Shout out to Tracy, who's been working with us to get this webinar going. Always enjoy. This is an awesome part of being in home services and a joy to do these webinars and AKA podcasts. I'm 43, so I've always loved radio shows, and this kind of feels like we're on a radio show. So my name is Ruben Ugarte, General Manager of Home Services here at Active Prospect. I've been here for 5.5 years now, selling our SaaS software. We'll kind of get into what Active Prospect is, but just kind of a quick backstory. Been selling technology for 5.5 years. Prior to coming on board, I worked for a really large residential solar company. It was a $150 million install brand out of California and Nevada. That company sold in 2016 and 2019, and I used to run their call center of 80 seats and a lot of their media purchasing. did a lot of media buying, and I actually used ActiveProspect software from 2014 to 2019. So I was a client before I came on board and actually worked and sold software. Never sold software before. It was kind of never something that I thought I'd do, but here I am 5.5 years later. Prior to running media in the call center for a solar company, I sold residential and small commercial solar for about 2-3 years. This is pre-PPA. This is pre kind of loans and all that. And then prior to that, which I don't think a lot of people know, my family owns a roofing company called A&R Roofing, A&R Roofing and Solar out of Eagle Rock, California, which is right between Glendale and Pasadena region. I've sold hundreds of roofs, thousands of squares, insulation, windows, gutters, solar attic fans, you name it. I've unfortunately fallen off of a roof. I've sold metal roofs in Malibu. I've sold roofs and solar. And I think that background has helped kind of in working with so many different brands. And I'm excited to talk about NSLI because that's kind of getting back to my sales rep roots of doing demos and pulling up my truck to people's homes. So that's kind of quick,
Let's
long.
let's talk about you falling off a roof real quick. Just as a quick reminder to anybody out there looking to get a roofing job done at your home, make sure that your roofing contractors are properly equipped with the necessary insurances in the event that one of their guys does fall off the roof into the bushes or onto the lawn or what have you. You don't want to be held liable for that. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I won't get into the details, but just I've been a roofer in high school. My uncles owned a roofing company for years. I used to tear off roofs in the summer. It's a terrible job. It's one of the worst jobs I've ever done in my life. And you need the right shoes. But from tearing off roofs to going to the dump to selling, I have a lot of empathy and a lot of respect for construction companies and brands, not just roofers, but bath installation companies, window companies. It is a lot of work to run a large brand, but it's a lot of work just to run a small, local, regional company, a family business, so and everything in between. So I have a lot of
here,
empathy for that.
kudos to
Going,
the laborers too, Ruben. You know, those guys, I've seen them roof through
yeah,
thunderstorms. These guys are
yeah,
hard
absolutely.
workers, and roofing is not an easy job. So kudos to
No,
you
it's
as well. But sorry, disrupted you
no.
flow. Please tell us about
Yeah,
Active.
kind of going talking about Active Prospect. I feel like we're crossing the chasm at this point. When I got here 5.5 years ago, we had maybe 5 brands. Empire Today, ADT. Now we have over 225, including a lot of the folks who are here on this call, it looks like. We represent tons of buyers, tons of sellers and publishers. And Active Prospect, in layman's terms, is strictly a software SaaS company. We're based out of Austin, Texas. Our founder, Steve Rafferty, is our CEO, and we're about 150 employees strong. We are in tons of different verticals, not just home services, but consumer packaged goods, financial services, insurance. And we essentially act as the lead management, compliance, and intelligent lead routing platform that both buyers and sellers use to exchange consumer information from the point of the web form into the CRM or dialer or system of choice for that installation brand or for that buyer. So we're air traffic control, we're a bi-directional API, but ultimately we're a technology layer and a protective layer in front of a CRM, and we help to improve quality for home service brands.
All right,
Tell us
HomeBuddy.
about HomeBuddy.
I'll tell you about HomeBuddy.
You
So,
bet.
HomeBuddy is a fairly new brand in the home lead generation or home services, home contractor lead generation space. A lot of our clients that have been with us historically know us as Siren Group, where we recently introduced HomeBuddy as a new brand, a DBA here in the States for home contractors in the early part of 2022. So while brand is fairly recent, company and core competencies have been around for a while. What is it that we do? We basically generate digital leads for our contractors. We generate those on an exclusive one-to-one basis, so there's no I use the term shotgun blasting. Essentially, it's like kind of a scatter that goes out to contractors. You're getting multiple contractors receive the same lead. Homeowner, right? They're getting called within those first few minutes multiple times. But with HomeBuddy, it's just going to be one contractor that's going to be reaching out to you. We institute layers of qualification, which we'll get into a little bit more about what it is we do through our lead survey and our form. So we're qualifying homeowners before lead delivery. Our clients are only paying on what they receive as opposed to like a fixed marketing budget. So if we deliver, then they pay on that. If we don't, then they don't pay. And then also, where's the pillars with HomeBuddy? What is it that we're concentrated on most? It's customer dedication, customer feedback, and quality of communication. Focus on quality of the lead deliver, and then exclusivity. Those are going to kind of be what sets HomeBuddy apart from other lead generators, is that we promise we're going to have that relationship with you. We're going to get back to you. We're going to communicate with you. We're going to tell you what your data is saying. And then kind of you mentioned size. HomeBuddy is currently at 185 employees and growing, which is nice. When I came on board, I think I was employee number 117 back in January of 2023. And here we are now at 185 and continually growing.
That's awesome.
With that, Ruben, the next part, I'm going to leave to you.
Well, real quick, I got to ask, and we talked about this before. I've been growing a beard recently. Certainly, it's not as nice as yours, but I'm sure people in the audience are wondering who came up with the HomeBuddy logo, because I think that's why a lot of people are working with you. That logo is pretty sweet.
It's cute, isn't it? I mean, I don't know any other way to put it.
This is like the office guy. So this is like the home service guy who's in the office. Maybe he's ordering material, but to the presentation, the logo you have is, and I'm being serious, half joking here, but your logo is pretty cool. Like I think it's relatable.
I like it a lot, and I don't know who created it. I don't know if it was done internally or if it was a third party.
I think Tracy needs to look. We need to look into that because that's pretty key to this webinar.
There's a kid. I will tell you this. I shouldn't say kid. I'm 45, but he's in his 20s. A young man that works for Cabinet Restylers that looks just like our logo, like our little guy. Yeah, his name is.
We need to find this guy. We need to get this guy in the next webinar. But I do love your logo and I love the branding. I think I've always loved the branding that you guys have. It was very catchy when I first saw you guys a few years ago or a year ago. So question number one, just so we can kind of get into the audience and how many people and what kind of audience we have. Question number one, if we go to the next slide, is how many leads on average are you bringing in each month? And this is a good question because probably like yourself or like a lot of your account executives who talk to installation brands, I come across in any given week, sometimes on an average day, a brand who's buying 10,000 leads a month. And an hour later, I'll talk to a bath company who's buying 300 or 400 and everything in between, and sometimes even larger. So interesting to see. Please fill out the questionnaire. How many leads on average are you bringing in each month? We won't get into like what is owned and operated, what is third party, but just overall, how many leads are you bringing in? And it doesn't have to be digital. It can just be in general. How many leads overall? Less than 500, 500 to 1,000, and more than 1,000. We'll kind of sit on that real quick, but you figure, what would you say is the average cost per lead, Ryan? I know it varies by state and vertical, but on average, what would you say is an average home service lead here in America?
Well, you got calls and you got forms, right?
Let's go with forms. Let's go with forms just for the sake of that. Yeah.
So with forms, you could have a lead source that's really drilling down to kind of what exactly you're looking for. I don't want to mention any of our competitors, but some of our guys, look at that. Look at we got some big ones here. I was kind of getting into it, but I see the data and the feedback and kind of intrigued by this. More than 50% or 50% more than 1,000. That's good to hear. With regards to lead cost, I would say you're going to look in the neighborhood of about 60 to 70 bucks on average. Now with HomeBuddy, we have various lead prices dependent upon vertical. You could see, something kind of on the low end where you have like your, try to think, flooring might be one of our lower lead prices where you might have a higher lead price on window replacement. A lot of it's due to competitive nature of the vertical itself, and then also price point, right?
Yeah. And so the reason I asked that question is because at 30 or 500 leads, and we'll kind of get into the next question, but at 500 leads at 60, you're around 30 grand a month in spend, 30 times 12, 360K. At the 500 to 1,000, let's just say 1,000, you're at double that, right? So 60,000. So you're closer to the $720,000 media budget. And then assume 1,000, let's say 1,500. Once again, you are at 90,000. So you're over you're at that $1 million in media spend, which is a lot of money, right? That's a lot of leads.
Yeah,
So
you could see a $100 million company, Ruben, dedicating 12 to 15% of their budget to marketing expense. You're looking at, I'm doing the numbers. It's all fairly easy. It's 12 to 15 million in total marketing spend. And if HomeBuddy came in with, like you said, delivering 90,000, that's still under $1 million. That's still 8% of the marketing budget, 8-9% of their marketing budget cumulative on the year.
I think that's like efficient numbers. I know people try to get lower, but 12 to 15%, I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah. You're going to see higher than that net marketing cost in certain regions of the country where it's just more competitive. East Coast, a lot of that Philadelphia, Maryland, Virginia, New Jersey, very competitive marketplaces.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of installation brands out there that way. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on to question 2, which I'll let you take.
Yeah. So this question is, how many lead sources are you utilizing? How many sources of leads do you have on average a month? By that, I think I want to kind of get into what Ruben explained earlier. This is going to be external lead sources, not necessarily, canvassing, door knocking. This is not going to be internal referrals, your own internal referral campaign with existing clients. This is like Facebook campaigns. This is display advertising. This is HomeBuddy. This is Valpak. This is some of the other big lead generators in the space. What would you say you're utilizing? Now, the reason why we ask this question, and we ask this on our playbook when we go through like kind of a preliminary discovery call interview with any prospective client, is who are you utilizing and what are you utilizing? What's working well? This is more than 10 right here. It's a high number. I've talked to some contractors, very big operators. They're in the area of 50 to 60 different lead generation sources. And then I've spoken with very large home contractors that are paring their list down from 50, 55 to 5 or 6. And they just want the most efficient, the best net marketing cost, the best ROI, all delivered with just a few partners, and just manage that because it can get bulky, right? You have one person or maybe a team of 2 or 3 people dealing with 60 different lead generators. That's a lot of work.
That is a lot of work. During my heyday, at my prime of buying media in the solar, and people think it's a heyday now, right? Depending on when you got into it, but I was buying from 40 to 50 different sources, whether it was lead providers, live transfer providers, click to call. I mean, you name it, appointment setting companies. So 40 to 50, 5 to 10 is a lot of sources. And we do have a lot of brands who do use, 20, 30, but it's very few. I mean, you got to have a pretty big budget and a pretty good team to manage that many folks.
Look at that split. Pretty good.
Yeah, very similar to the previous question here. Yeah, most of the time when we come across clients, when I initially talk to them, if you're less than 15 million, 10 million, you're going to probably be at less than 5 sources. You start getting into 20, 30, 40 million plus, you're definitely getting into 6 or 10. And it's rare for me to come across brands who are doing more than 10. Sometimes brands who have smaller zip code regions have to kind of buy from a bunch of different people, but most of the time, if you have, a state or a few states, you can kind of figure things out, 6 to 10. But then if you're going into 4, 5, 6, 7 states and you're kind of going national, that's where I start to see brands who are 20, 30 sources. But once again, that's few and far in between.
And I just want to, Tracy asked us to do this just because there will be some people that won't be here. And when we show the survey and the results, if you're watching on a recorded video, you won't be able to see that. So let's just kind of talk about what we saw. The question we asked was, how many sources of leads do you have on an average month? Less than 5 came in at 25%. 6 to 10 came in at 36%, and then more than 10 came in at 39%. So I just want to make sure that, that's into the record for those that are watching this on video.
Gotcha.
And then Ruben, do you want to take the third question?
Yeah. Question number 3, Do you use NSLI to measure lead quality today? Option 1 is yes. Option 2 is no. Option 3 is what is NSLI? And for me, NSLI in the solar business, residential solar, I'm sure there are some brands that use it, but historically it was based on CPA or cost of acquisition CAC. We didn't use the term NSLI. So that was a new term that I learned maybe three years ago in going to some of these sales home service conferences, like, shout out to Chuck Toki and, the Grosso team and, Tony Hody and LeadsCon and kind of all these kind of sales, Dave Yoho. These are kind of terms that are starting to, or have kind of been implemented in home services, and more I come across brands and they are using NSLI. So interesting to see how many brands we have and how applicable that is to the previous averages.
Let me ask a quick question to Kale, who just chimed in here on the chat. Kale Shearer, DPLI. I'm assuming that means demo per lead issued. If I could get a confirmation from you on that, I'd appreciate it. Also, a quick shout out to Melissa Pedersen. We're not related. We have connected on LinkedIn, but it's, Ruben, how often?
It's okay. It's okay if you invited your family to juice up the numbers on this webinar, Ryan. My mom's out there somewhere. Hi, Mom. She'll ask a question. NSLI, do you guys come across before as we show the results, do you guys does that come up in conversations when you're talking with an installer who wants to buy leads or is buying leads?
Sophisticated marketers use the term.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. When you're talking to kind of a fairly new shop, what I mean by that is, let's say you take yourself, Ruben, let's say you branched off from your uncle's roofing business and you started your own, Ugarte roofing. Right, Rancho Cucamonga.
Dude, my family would disown me, just so you know. But let's talk about that scenario if that happens.
So let's say you're a 26, 27-year-old young man, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you went to university, maybe you didn't. Maybe you took some marketing courses, maybe you didn't. I don't know. But typically, what you see with the newer shops is they're not looking at these types of metrics. They're not looking at data. It's a lot of just white knuckling it those first few years just to be profitable and get through. Then, as you kind of advance your business, and you see this, the evolution of all businesses, right? Is that they start to figure out, okay, this is working, this is doing well, but now let's drill down a little bit further. Let's look at the data. Maybe they hire a data analytics person or somebody that can handle their marketing that's coming fresh out of university and is looking at this. And this is great. I'm looking at the data here. And Ruben, if you want to repeat what you're seeing to the team.
Absolutely. So question number 3 was, do you use NSLI to measure lead quality today? And we had 52% answer yes, that they do use NSLI. We had 4% who said no, I don't use it. And then we had 44% of folks say, what is NSLI? So this kind of goes to show, we're going to kind of dig into it and talk about it, but what is NSLI? And it's a question that comes up. So yeah, I'm glad that we threw that question in there.
Yeah, and those that said, what is an NSLI? That was me 2 years ago. The term was introduced to me at a qualified remodeler top 500 show. And Ruben, we talked about this. We were rapping as we were prepared for this webinar that I had no idea about this until I talked to one of my contacts and they were discussing this. What is an SLI? So we came back, we researched it, we passed it off to the sales team. We want the sales team to be equipped to understand what exactly we're talking about when this question comes up. So let's break it down. It's fairly simple. The formula for figuring it out: take your revenue figure off of the leads that have been issued, and then divide that by the number of leads that have been issued. And so I kind of want to get into some terminology here, because when you talk to various contractors, and I was talking to Tracy about this prior to the call, is that you talk about like an offense or defensive coordinator in the NFL, right? They have a playbook and they have terminology. Most of us are operating under the same plays, but we do have different terminology within our system. So at HomeBuddy, we discuss leads issued, or I should say leads delivered, a set rate on those leads delivered, the issue rate on the set leads, and then demo rate, and then what is booked from demo. And this is what we ask of our clients. In disposition reports, we ask them to provide us that feedback so that we can optimize their campaigns. But ultimately, what are we looking for at HomeBuddy? We're looking for what setting, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, you can kind of get into leads issued. There's a little bit of qualification on the client's end when they're issuing that lead, but others may refer to it as set, stick, demo, um, set, issue, demo. I'm trying to think. Maybe you've heard some other terminology,
Yeah,
Ruben.
we used to use set rate, so lead to set, so contact rate, okay, how many leads am I getting a hold of? Set rate, your appointment rate, confirmation rate, which is how many of the appointments you confirm, demo rate, which is the actual demos in home, the sales rep got into the home, and then ultimately your gross sale rate or close rate. And then we used to factor in the cancel rate, which is part of it. People, to this point, net sale, that's kind of that same thing. But yeah, I mean, there's kind of a whole funnel of metrics, and you're kind of trying to make sure that it all follows through.
Yeah. And so
Net sale being a net install versus a gross sale. If somebody wrote an order form, got a sale, but a net sale would be an installation.
yeah, thank you, Ruben.
Yes.
So we're seeing this metric a lot, the NSLI. We're not seeing too many demo per lead issue. We're not seeing too many SSLI set per lead issue. But we're seeing is once it passes internal qualification, once the outbound call center makes that call and they're
Right.
qualifying that home or verifying that you will have both homeowners or maybe the single, or if it's like a daughter and her father helped contribute to the mortgage or what have you, make sure that all parties that can make a decision on a job are present. And so that's a lot of qualification prior to the actual issue of it. So what factors are going to contribute into your SLI number? Number one, it's going to be that quality of that lead. So you can work with lead generators that are going to deliver you several thousand leads per month, but their conversion rates are horrible. And maybe their price point's low and it works out for you in the end because the ROI is manageable. It's right there, net marketing costs. Then you're going to have others out there that may not deliver you those thousands of volume, but they're going to have a high conversion rate. And so it makes sense for you, even though you're not getting the volume you'd hope for, but the quality is there. What's your next question going to be? How are you guys going to get me more volume? Where's your volume? Bring it more. I need more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this kind of touches on, I did a webinar previously where we talked about, it was regarding the marketing team synergy and sales team synergy. And one of the things that I've always seen that this term and this process or equation helps to bring together is historically you always had friction, especially as brands grow, between the marketing departments and the sales team. They were sometimes in home services, they're siloed. And like if the sales team's not doing well, the marketing team's like, aren't they selling? And then the sales team is like, well, the marketing leads are not good quality, they suck. And there's always like this back and forth. The NSLI kind of brings that metric together for both the sales and the marketing team. And it allows owners to, from a business standpoint, not necessarily just focus on the deals closed, but on how much revenue you're bringing in from the marketing dollars that you're shelling out to the individual sales rep. It also gives the ability to bring in the efficiency and profitability into the equation, not just a simple close rate, which I think can be kind of deceiving
Misleading.
sometimes.
Yeah.
You have a lot of owners who use it to evaluate their teams, and it takes into instance situations like no shows, maybe one-leggers or, rescissions, credit rejects, all those things come into play with the NSLI, which don't come into on a close rate. So it really allows an owner to evaluate inefficiencies or efficiencies at the sales rep level. And then at the same time, sometimes when you're selling, it could just be pure luck. You just get a lead and it's in a nice area and the customer was already ready to buy and vice versa. So I think NSLI has become prevalent, and a lot of the owners in leading up to this webinar, I kind of reached out to some folks and they're like, yeah, we totally use it. And it's become a staple of our business.
I've noticed with some of our clients, because HomeBuddy, while we do offer gutter guard, gutter protection leads, we have exclusivity with a specific client, but that does not prevent any of our clients installing roofing, windows, and siding from selling a gutter lead. So when we're seeing these NSLI figures, we're seeing somebody come in and sell a roof, but they're also selling a new gutter system. Like you mentioned, a whole roof system, and the intricacy of the pricing of that involved, and then additional services along with it. And then just to touch on what you said, and I have another question on something you mentioned, is that there's various benchmarks within a sales team. So if you have 8 estimators, sales team, you're going to have your benchmark SNLI, NSLI, and then you're going to have your individual sales reps, NSLI. And then you're going to have your marketing NSLI, and then you're going to have your media, and then how those are performing. So set benchmarks, measure against those benchmarks for performance. And I would say younger salespeople, as they come in and start learning your process, they may not be able to sell as much up front, but as they get seasoned and they get more comfortable being in front of the homeowner, you're going to see those NSLI numbers increase.
It's more granular, and takes into account a lot of other pieces rather than the gross, issued and sale rate. I think also too, one thing is, as we kind of talk about this, and I've kind of done research, the ability for owners to lay out, if you are paying your sales reps 10% commission and say the deals are $6,000, you can equate that every time that they go to a door, get a demo, you're making $600. So the ability to show the sales rep that it's not just the sale, the conversion, and your sales commission, but you have a percentage to get to that, right? It's all metric driven. And I thought that was pretty cool, because historically as sales reps, especially in home services, you're just thinking about the end result. Once I get a gross sale, once I get a net install, I'm gonna get that commission on that ticket size of that. But if you break it down on the NSLI, that shows you the funnel to get to that endpoint of commission. So I thought that was cool.
Let's jump into the funnel. That's a good segue, Tracy, if you want to go to the next slide. So this is HomeBuddy. This is what we call a truth funnel. We share these on our demonstration calls or our demo calls. What exactly would an NSLI benchmark look like? So we're going to start out with what we try and promote is a 300 lead campaign with any new client. Once we see HomeBuddy clients get to 300, we have a retention rate of about 96%. And so you have a campaign of 300. Right off the bat, you're going to see of that 300, 221 of those. And we discussed this in sales calls. You're going to get people that are not interested. They filled out the form, but you made a comment of a one-legger. Is that like kind of a half in, half out, one leg in the door?
One-leggers, it makes you think of somebody with one leg. One-leggers are when you demo a homeowner, a couple, and the decision maker is not there. Okay. So the salesperson cannot get the sale because it's like, hey, my wife's not here, my husband's not here. We love it, but I need to wait for my partner.
Yeah. Okay. I'd
be interested in the audience if that definition is what you perceive it as. Maybe there's some differences, but that's what I know it to be.
I never heard that. I like it though. I'm going to use it.
It's a terrible term. One-leggers.
That is a one-legger. Yeah, you got a confirmation here. Not all homeowners.
That is a one-legger. That is correct. That is a one-legger.
I've got to throw this one in, and I don't mean to belabor this webinar, but has anybody ever heard the term body bag appointment? And I think I brought this up with you, Ruben.
Body bag appointment.
Yeah. I never heard that one.
That might be similar to the old sales term, throw them down the stairs, potentially, which used to be an old mortgage term. But tell me about that. What is a body bagger?
Body bagger appointments are going to be hyper aggressive sales organizations that once they get in the door. Now, this came from an old school window replacement client of mine here in Woodstock, Georgia. Was essentially, I'm not going to send you a body bag appointment. I was like, well, what is that? He said, the only way to get my sales rep out of the house, you got to kill the guy and put him in a body bag to get him out. So I know it's horrible, but these terms make me laugh. It's kind of the spice of the job, right?
Well, that's why there's so much evolution, and that's why businesses like myself and your team, and there's so many great companies who have gotten into the home service industry, because historically it has been a fear-driven industry where sales reps are trying to drive fear. As a homeowner, you don't know what the price is, you don't know what the cost is, you got to get like 4 estimates, and that's starting to evolve with technology and all types of stuff. So interesting.
Yeah. So I'll kind of, I kind of got off topic. Let's get back on topic.
Yes.
So NSL benchmark, 300 leads resulting in roughly 80 set appointments, approximately 80 set appointments, about a clip of about 26%, 27%. From that, 51 result in a stick or an issue rate. And then on top of that, of the 51, you have 7 that result in not just a demo, but actual booked work. So 7 from 300 at about, I think that's roughly 2.4, 2.5%. Somebody can do the math for me and post that in the chat. But with average ticket on 7 jobs, you're looking at 147,000, 177 in revenue. Off-issued appointments being 51, NSLI number of 2,885, which Ryan Stevens, you'd mentioned earlier, your number was, I think, at 586, and somebody else had mentioned a number. Dave, when Colossus, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, my apologies, but you said this year at 4,000, but you're struggling with volume from HomeBuddy. So yeah, those NSLI numbers, I've typically see them in the range of about 3,500 to 4,300 with any one of our clients about how we're delivering. And I think that's a pretty good benchmark to set ourselves at. And so if you guys ever want to know, take a screen capture of this, and then now you understand what NSLI is, how that affects your sales organization, and how you can go ahead and start working to beef those numbers up to increase revenue per client, per lead issued. Now, we've got into NSLI. If there's no other questions, let's get into ActiveProspect and what you guys are doing with TCPA compliance. And then from here, Ruben, it's gonna be the Ruben show from here.
Yeah, well, real quick before we go, let's go right back to that last slide, because when I do these webinars, a lot of times I'll like text friends and I'll be like, hey, I'm doing this webinar, what are like some thoughts? And so I just wanted to read a text that I got from a really large residential installer on the East Coast. And they said, I asked them, hey, are you using NSLI? And they said, this naturally produces a much higher NSLI to the company. Some side benefits include a higher close to issue rate, higher demo rates. It gives us some issues in that no sales reps can hide once the spend shifts to exclusive, but also makes the stage of the funnel more important. Agents can't hide either as the cost per lead and cost per phone call increases. But again, when it all works, it's a much better through output to the company, and employees' mindset overall is strong. So interesting that it's not just being used. I mean, it's being used by massive, $100 million brands all the way down to, smaller bath brands. So going into this next question, question number 4, are all of your leads TCPA compliant with the latest rules and regulations? So answer number 1 is, I hope so. Answer number 2, yes, I'm absolutely sure. Number 3, no. And number 4, TCPA, question mark. Does that affect me? So what's interesting is, and I'll kind of just give a side note. So I worked for a really large, I mentioned this earlier, worked for a really large residential solar company. Historically, we were an outbound shop. We would buy data lists. And I think there's a lot of brands out there that used to do this, right? Beachy dialer, you basically buy a phone number, phone book, you load it into your dialer and you just pound the phone. And around 2012, TCPA, which stands for the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, basically empowered homeowners and consumers to sue brands who call them all the time. And I'm sure folks who grew up in the 80s, 90s, and more so, I mean, you remember coming home at dinner and your phone would be ringing like at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And like, oh man, don't answer the phone. Or just you would take the phone hook off when people used to have landlines. And so our company was an outbound shop, and I didn't learn about TCPA until we had a TCPA class action. And the owner at the time was trying to sell the company, and investors don't like TCPA lawsuit. Nobody likes class action. That's bad for everybody. That's bad for the P&L. But we learned what TCPA is, what it costs. And it got to the point where, hey, we need to switch into inbound. We need to figure out this whole consent thing. Our lawyer at the time said, hey, you got to go talk to this company called ActiveProspect. They have this technology. And this was circa 2014. We ended up settling the class action, taking care of it, and paying out, ultimately paying somebody, a lawyer out, settling that. And then ultimately we started to convert from being an outbound shop to an inbound shop. And that was the evolution between 2014 and 2015. The company went from having 90% of their sales coming in via outbound dialing, Vici dialer, to inbound sources and the ability to get consent. So I learned TCPA the hard way. And being here at ActiveProspect for 5 years, I have a lot of clients who come to me after they learn the hard way. But more and more, we have a lot of clients coming to us who are like, yeah, we haven't been sued. We're not massive. We're not a big target, but you know what? We want to do things the right way. So let's go to the results. I wanted to just share that story. So question number 4, are all of your leads TCPA compliant with the latest rules and regulations? We have 50% say, I hope so, question mark. We had 33% say, yes, I'm absolutely sure. We had 8% say no, and we said we have 4% say TCPA question mark. Does that affect me? So once again, 50%, more than half, 54% are like, I'm not too sure. I think so. I hope so. So let's talk about TCPA. It's a riveting subject, but let's talk about it. It is really getting Telephone Consumer Protection Act. Once again, that's what it refers to. Essentially, if you're receiving a lead from any source and your brand, not just home service brand, but any brand, mortgage company, college, education, and you call or text that lead or contact that lead, this law applies to you. The whole goal is to alleviate this old school method that brands used to use, which is if I just buy a lot of leads and call them a lot, I'm going to create more revenue. As the evolution of telephonics and cell phones and messaging, this has really empowered consumers, and really serial litigators is really what it is. So when I say serial litigator, and this is probably not news for some of these larger brands because some of them have had litigation, but for a lot of these other brands, right around 10 to 20 million, 20 million and above, you become a target. There's basically all these serial litigators out there that fill out forms nefariously, and they do it on like 100, 200 companies. They wait, and they have tons of cell phones, and then they wait till these companies call them back. And they'll record all these calls and all these brands who call them back, and they go, oh, wow, brand number X called me like 30 times, sent me like 20 texts. Brand number, Z did this. And then right around the 6-month year mark, sometimes it happens right away, but I've seen more and more where these litigators wait for a year because you've called them more times, because they can sue you more as you call more. They'll contact the brand. They'll send them a legal letter. It's like a 1-page letter. It just says, hey, Mr. Installer, you called me 80 times, 30 times. I never filled out a form, and you owe me $100,000. You owe me $1 million, or even worse, class action, right? Multi-million. The bigger the brand, the bigger the sum. And the letters that we used to get, my solar company, were like, hey, you called me a bunch of times. You owe me like 200,000, but if you pay me in the next 48 hours, we'll cut it to 5,000. And so these litigators are out there, and they're just fishing. They're out there, getting all, putting a bunch of hooks in the sea, so to speak. And they're just hoping that they call you, they scare you, and that you settle right away. And to be honest, there's a lot of brands who do that. They don't want to have to deal with figuring out how to defend TCPA. They just settle right away. That was a strategy that I used as an early marketer, 2014, to get past all that stuff. So kind of moving into why TCPA compliant lead generation is so important going forward. The FCC recently, they call it closing the lead generator loophole, which is the focus is to mitigate these robocalls and all these texts that are made without consent. More and more, the lead generation space has become and looked become a problem or is looked upon as a problem. That's not necessarily the case with brands like HomeBuddy and a lot of great brands that are out there that do a lot of good work. But ultimately, they are trying to close this loophole, which is historically the ability for brands to get a single consumer or a consumer to fill out their web form and then ultimately sell that lead to multiple different companies. I have roofingusa.com. You fill out a form because you're interested in roofs. I then go and I have 300, 500 roofing companies that I sell the leads to. I figure out what zip this consumer is in, and I sell that lead to 3 different companies. And right away, 3 different companies are now calling that consumer and going, "Oh, you filled out a form. I'm a partner with this." So, and it comes out in different various ways, but solar companies specifically have been very aggressive over, to say the least, very aggressive over the last 10 years.
Probably the most aggressive, wouldn't you agree?
The most aggressive by far. And that's kind of led to the growth of residential solar and also decline of residential solar right now. But ultimately, it just leads to a shitty consumer experience. Nobody wants to ask for something because they want something and then get bombarded on their phone and on their text and then via email. Like it's just a bad user experience. So once again, I kind of mentioned consent forms. Moving forward, express consent, prior written consent is one-to-one consent. So what FCC has instituted and what the law is, and this is going into effect early next year, is that if you're a consumer, you fill out a form, you can only be contacted by a single brand, which is shown on that form. So it's going to be one-to-one consent. So if you go to a form, and I mean, Ryan, maybe you can speak to this and kind of how HomeBuddy is doing it, which I know you guys have historically and always been one-to-one, but ultimately this removes the third-party multi-sell model from the business, which I will say has driven a massive amount of revenue and sales for thousands of brands, not just in solar, but in roofing and in a lot of people here on this phone call. And so there's a new era coming around and it's going to affect volume. It's going to affect pricing. And I'll kind of stop there. I'd love to hear what HomeBuddy and what your position is and what you're seeing on the HomeBuddy side.
Yeah, when this ruling first came out, obviously I think everybody it like was a shockwave to everybody in lead gen in the system about, okay, look what the US government just did. FCC ruled on this, TCPA compliance. Immediately, we knew we were compliant. We were compliant prior to, we're compliant after because of the nature of the lead delivery. The disclaimer on the final submission page for HomeBuddy, we're providing information to the homeowner before they hit submit that this contractor will be in contact with you. They hit submit, then they're given a notification page. Prepare for a phone call from these guys. They get an email. Initially, when this happened, I thought, okay, good, this is bad for our competitors, right? But you start to think about it a little bit longer. Our niche and what we do at HomeBuddy is delivering that one-to-one. I'd hate to see more competitors get into our space. I prefer they stay into that space where they're blasting it out to multiple parties. And like, I'll kind of step away from this and explain something that happened to me. And I talked about this at the Home Services Growth Summit about 8 weeks ago. Is my wife and I have a major project here at our home. We took out a HELOC for it. And when we were going through the process of submitting all of our, our financials and our information, the last piece was going to be a hard credit pool. I ignorantly appended my cell phone number to my social like 13, 14 years ago when I took out my first mortgage. They did a hard credit pull on a Tuesday morning, and from Tuesday at 8:30 to close of business on Friday that end of the week, I'd received 200 phone calls and text messages from different providers. You want to talk about homeowner fatigue, about getting bombarded? I'd already closed the deal with my loan provider. I wasn't going to go with anybody different, but I was just absolutely hit up all week. I mean, I literally had to turn my phone off during sales calls because I would get 3 to 4 phone calls during it. Was just insane. Now, the way that I internalized that and looked at this is like lead generation providers. They're sending it out to 4 different contractors, 2 aggregators who are then sending it out to 4 more. Think about that homeowner. Now they're getting contacted by 10 contractors in 10 minutes, and then 15 minutes, and then an hour, and then 4 hours, and they're getting text messages and emails. It can be fatiguing, right? Yes. And
It
so
is.
that's kind of the value prop of HomeBuddy is we're not going to deliver you a fatigued homeowner. You're going to be contacting them and you're going to be getting them in contact with them quickly before they move on to their next search or whoever else they may be looking for in that
Yep.
space. So just so anybody that's considering HomeBuddy, we're TCPA compliant. We were prior to, we're now, it's not going to be an issue for us.
And this kind of segues into this next slide. And I know we're kind of running short on time. It looks like we still have quite a few folks here that are engaged, which is great. But you want to take this slide and then I can kind of go into the AP and kind of what we do.
Yeah, so I'll be quick about this. When I say buy quality leads from vendors that deliver, I will preface this by saying give vendors a shot. You never really know how they're going to perform. Now, a salesperson can give you data and give you all the bells and whistles and tell you how well they're going to perform, but ultimately you're not going to know until you kind of essentially pull up the hood and get that engine running and see what's happening. And when I say give them a shot, don't give them just a week or 2 weeks. Give them a full campaign run. Exactly what they're stating to you is, hey, we need to get you here so that we can get data for here so you can evaluate here. And when I say buy quality leads, what I mean by that is pre-qualified. Make sure that this homeowner is actually interested in your service and in your vertical and what you're servicing. If you're a roofing contractor, you obviously don't want to be buying leads for concrete raising or, drainage, because that typically is a big issue, is, that affects you, like your foundation, if the drainage isn't property coming off the line of the roof. Make sure that it's qualified homeowner, it's within scope of work, it's within your zip code footprint, that they're TCPA compliant, and that they're reaching out to the homeowner, and then utilize these programs that offer qualification levels on delivered leads. So as you're doing your research, and I'm not going to mention the name of this window replacement contractor, but I met them at the LeadsCon dinner. Thank you very much, Ruben and ActiveProspect team. So we were kind of going through this call, and he told me he was interviewing I was one of 12 different lead generation providers. They're doing their due diligence, and they're learning more about the lead gen process. So they're educating themselves as they go. So if anything, if you're new to lead gen, get in front of lead gen providers. What's the worst that can happen? They email you a few times when you're trying to follow up and close you. Don't give them your phone number, right? Don't do that, but communicate by email, interview them, give the campaign its fair due and its test run. And then what works and what utilizes, optimize and increase. And from there, I'll go back to you, Ruben.
Yeah, no, I agree. So let's talk about increasing the quality of leads. For some here on this call, this might be like, yeah, I'm already doing this. But as a buyer, I historically, and a lot of buyers, a lot of installation companies that we have, a lot of times they're buying leads and they're putting them in their CRM, they're calling them and trying to figure it out. There is a way to do it. So what a lot of brands are doing are getting trusted form certificates, which we kind of talked about, keeping non-compliant leads out. So if you're a roofing company, don't buy leads that are iPad leads or Amazon gift card leads. There's also the ability, and this is all kind of stems around what's called real-time rejection, the ability to protect your CRM and not allow leads to come in that don't meet your criteria. So when you think of our technology, think of a digital underwriter. You're able to keep non-compliant leads out. You're able to check leads in real-time milliseconds before delivering to your CRM. Is it a duplicate? If yes, pass. If yes, reject. If no, pass. Is it on my zip code list? If no, reject. If yes, pass. Is it on my internal DNC? If yes, reject. If no, pass. So these are simple automated things that you can do that a lot of brands currently do internally at the call center level after they've already spent the money. You can eliminate fraud. There's APIs out there for litigators, the ability to identify if a lead has a good phone number. You can append data, you can normalize data, you can improve lead quality. And once again, this is all in between when you get a lead and before buying it and before sending it in your CRM. It's a technology that we have. It's called real-time rejection. Massive brands are using it. Small brands are using it. More and more people are figuring out, wow, I need to have more than a CRM and a dialer. I need to have this lead management, compliance, and intelligent routing tech. The ability to integrate vendors. If you're trying to integrate 5, 10, 20 plus lead vendors, there is no way to do it effectively in a manual way. You have to have a technology, you have to have a lead management platform, and it gives you the ability to essentially underwrite in real time. Kind of moving on to the next slide. the ability to create a data snowball. So when I think of a data snowball, think of it like when you buy a lead or you're getting a lead from HomeBuddy, you're getting a certain amount of fields. How many fields do you normally give, Ryan, when you send a lead?
It depends on the vertical. So some can be as low as 5 and some up to the neighborhood of about 12 to 13
Okay.
fields for entry. That's
Okay.
that's not just including name, phone number, email. That's qualification questions as we go. So,
Gotcha.
existing status of the roof,
Yep.
condition, how many walls are you looking at replacing and like kind of a kitchen remodel. There's a lot of questions we ask per vertical, but it's varied. And ultimately it's built out to drop the bounce rate so that we're getting
Yep.
people that actually go through the funnel, answer the questions.
Gotcha. So think of the fields that include PII, the address, the phone number, the email, right? Um, Here in the US, if you have that information, you can what's called an API, which stands for Application Program Interface. So if you've never heard that term before, API, all it is the ability to call out to a third-party data source in real time, we're talking milliseconds, before delivering the lead to your CRM. And you can get back information. You can validate information. Some of this information is such as, is this the right phone number for the homeowner? Is this a valid email address? Is this an active email? Is this a business or residential address? Is this address valid? Is this like the right format? You can standardize data. So you can call out to the USPS, U.S. States Postal Service, and format the address properly. You can, once you've done that, you can then post to Google API and get a map, a link that sends into your CRM. You can enhance your lead. And this all comes back to the data snowball effect. So the ability to integrate all these different APIs, all these different systems in an automated way before routing the lead into your CRM, this is what we call the data snowball. And there's all these different APIs, too many to mention, but there's so many that brands are using. And I'd love if anyone's using APIs out there, feel free to throw them into the chat. But there's so many awesome things out there: fraud detection, phone verification, demographic append. So going on to the next slide here, the data snowball effect, we call it an enhanced lead, a snowball lead, but just take the ability to get what you're getting, what you're paying for, and then you're spending 40, 50, $60 on a lead, spend another 20, 25, 30 cents and append and verify a bunch of information and have that information flow into your call center. So when your agent is talking to the consumer, the homeowner, they're able to have a more robust conversation. They're able to have a compressed conversation, and they don't necessarily have to ask every single question because now they have a better picture, a better understanding of what that consumer is, who they are, more valid. And that goes all the way down to the trusted form cert, where you can actually see a video. But that's an enhanced lead, what we call a data snowball. And if you've never heard of it, more and more brands are using this than ever before to improve the quality of the lead and improve that NSLI. Moving on to the next. Any questions on that, Ryan, or anybody out there before I move on?
No question. I just was looking at all the data provided. It's wild these days what you can gather,
You can get a lot of the solar companies inside of our tech are calling out to a solar API where they're getting like the sun radiance on a roof. We have a lot of home service companies who get title on property. Does this lead match title, or is this person on title? You can check for fraud to see if they're bots. You can get how long the consumer was on the offer, which is an indicator of intent. So there's all these different things that you can do before sending the lead into your CRM so that you have a more polished lead, a more robust lead, and ultimately you're protecting your investment, which is your CPL. You're adding to that. So moving on to Trusted Form. What is Trusted Form? Trusted Form is a JavaScript, which is essentially a line of code that we've put out there. It's been around for about 12 years, and it's used in over 40,000 websites, over 2.5 billion leads annually. We support thousands of customers. It's now seen as kind of like the compliance product of choice in the industry, which is awesome. I know 10 years ago when our owner and founder, Steve, introduced Trusted Form, like nobody wanted to use it. They're like, oh, you're going to mess up the industry. Everyone's going to know my leads suck or they're old. And now you're giving them like all this insight. But ultimately, it's called Trusted Form. Why? Because when you buy a form, you should trust that it is what the seller says it is. And Trusted Form is basically a snippet of code. All the lead providers in the industry, HomeBuddy, Home Advisor, many others use it. When you buy a lead, you can say, hey, I want a Trusted Form certificate. I want a certified lead. And ultimately, when that consumer fills out that web form, it creates this certificate. Think of it like a barcode. When that lead travels to you, the buyer, or to anybody out there in the ecosystem, you as a consumer, as a buyer, can go, let me scan that barcode. Let me see, is this a roofing lead? Is it a window lead? Okay, great. Is it have the proper verbiage that I want? Was it created recently? It's really the who, what, when, and where of a lead. Rather historically, when buyers buy leads, home service companies buy leads, they're just like paying $50 and hoping that it's a window lead, hoping that it's a roofing lead. With Trusted Form, you take all of that out and you create a transparent transaction that gives you visibility to what you're actually paying for.
I like that.
Moving on to Trusted Form Retain, which once again, this kind of ties back into the FCC on the next slide here. You need written consent for the consumer before telemarketing them. The whole goal is to store a video playback. And, you know, if this is going over some folks' heads, feel free to reach out after the webinar. But ultimately, we have a video playback. So your team can literally audit sources and providers to go, hey, what are they showing the consumer? I know what I show a consumer on my website and my Google AdWords because it's me, but what are my sources? What is this source that I'm paying $20,000 to? What are they saying to my consumer? If you know that, you can better help your appointment setting team and your team overall get the consumer over that point of interest and get them to an appointment, demo, and sale. And so the whole goal of Trusted Form is to create an audit-proof trail and allow you, the buyer, you, the installer, to document express written consent. If you ever get sued, you ever have a litigator call you, you're like, you know what? I got Trusted Form certificates. I'm going to go ahead and send you the certificate, click on it, and you can go ahead and pound some salt because I have proof that you filled out this form. You have IP, you have browser, you have geo, you have operating system, and you have exactly what was shown to the consumer. I've had a lot of brands out there, big and small, be like, you saved us hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, because we fend off litigators all the time. And that's what Trusted Form Retain helps you do.
Is there anything more gratifying in this life than sticking it to an attorney?
You know, yeah, I mean, it's awesome. It's an awesome tool, and it's a way to level up and go, listen, I'm not compliant now, but you know what? I know I should be. Let me go ahead and start to figure out how to do this, and we're here to help. So moving on to this next slide, which I know kind of gets into the kind of practical tips. I'll let you kind of take the lead here.
Thanks, Ruben. Yeah. So number one, get your leads from a trusted source provider. This kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier. Test various lead gen providers out. Talk to colleagues in the space. Find out what they're using. If you go to, for instance, we'll be at Peak Profit Summit next week. If you're going to be there, swing by HomeBuddy booth, chat with me or Brian, our director of sales. Be glad to talk to you about what we find valuable in the marketplace. Just kind of jump into that second piece is we're coming off TCPA compliance. Don't be afraid to ask your lead gen providers, are you in compliance with the new ruling? Will you be in compliance? And can you explain to me how you will be in compliance? Never hurts to ask. Pre-qualify your leads. This is through the use of Trusted Form before it flows into your CRM, making sure that, like, what did you call it? Polishing? Is that what you called it? Polishing a lead?
Polishing your lead. Yeah, you're buying something, you're polishing it up, and you're priming it so that it goes into your CRM and to your appointment setters in a nice, shiny way.
I like that. I like that. Enhance your leads with the data snowball, kind of piggybacking off of part 3 that we just went on. And then I would say this, if you're not responding to leads on like a form fill into your CRM within the first minute, you will see a pretty precipitous drop off in engagement with that homeowner once you get past about 5 minutes. So HomeBuddy, Our call center, our internal call center, the goal is to get on the phone with them in less than 45 seconds. Why is that? The homeowner is most likely still in front of their computer. They're still interested. They're still thinking about that window replacement project after they've submitted the lead. Get on the phone, get with them quickly. Hatch uses the term speed to lead. We use the term as well. It's like Kleenex or, any of those brand names that have become kind of the actual product itself. But speed to lead is the most important thing on leads delivered. Get in front of that homeowner quickly. And then I know we're going to jump into this CTA on the last slide, but Ruben, a question did come in. Is ActiveProspect integrated with solar review leads?
No, Solar Reviews is one of the solar lead gen providers who doesn't have Trusted Form. With that being said, they also have a very phenomenal customer journey and do double verification. I've known them for years. I used to buy leads from them. If you can get them to use Trusted Form, I'll send you a gift card. But no, they do not. Full transparency.
Okay. And then I will say there's two other questions that we didn't address, and we're now 9 minutes over. So I just want to Usman, I believe it's Khalid, and then an anonymous attendee, they ask questions. If you wouldn't mind, would you email me those questions? I do want to address them. My email is very simple, ryan.pedersen@homebuddy.com. If you're wondering about the actual spelling of my name, you can just hover your mouse over my tile and you can see it. But it's just ryan.pedersen@homebuddy. Oh, thank you, Tracy. She posted it in the chat. Send me those questions and I'd be glad to get back with you on another thread. But let's kind of get into this CTA here. If you're interested in utilizing ActiveProspect or HomeBuddy, this is where we're going to ask them for their money, right? The pitch at the end of the webinar. But if you're interested, here are our engagement pages. Tracy, I don't know if we have. Yeah, there we do. All right, she's on the ball. Yeah, if you're interested in learning more about either of the brands today, ActiveProspect or HomeBuddy or both, go ahead and post that here. We'll get that result and we'll be in contact.